after being around for less than a month, CNN Plus is closing down. Now, it's not really a surprise if you've been following what's been going on with CNN Plus, because it had a, let's say, less than spectacular reveal and first month, but we'll jump into this. This article from The Verge says that the streaming service was doomed from the beginning. So what's going on and why are they shutting down? So we can, jump past some of these first statements and announcements because I don't really care about that. It says that CNN imagined the service as a new way of thinking about news coverage with new personality-driven shows and access to some of CNN's best original series. So basically, it was a way to get more CNN by paying money. And that's the problem. It's a thing that people didn't really want. There wasn't a desire for things like this. To show you what I mean, we can see that CNN reportedly planned to spend almost $1 billion on CNN Plus over a few years. But already they had spent somewhere between $100 and $300 million. And I said that correctly, million. That's a lot of money, especially over, the past month. I understand it takes a lot of money to get something like this going, but $300 million? And this is where I think the first issue comes in. They spent so much money and they didn't really see a great return. Because in this first month, they had about 150,000 people sign up for the $6 a month service. 150,000 people sounds like a lot. But when you're talking about spending $300 million on a service, you want the launch of that service to be a lot better than 150,000 people, because that is minuscule. That's nobody. Now, I recognize my subscriber base is like 2,000 people, and that means like 10 of you actually watch my videos, and I appreciate that. But on the other hand, I don't have $300 million to work with. You give me that much money, I bet that in a month I can beat 150,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So it was doomed from the beginning because they just don't have people who actually want to watch this stuff, let alone pay $6 a month to get more CNN. Now, they also point out in this article, another possible reason for it closing so quickly is because CNN is owned by Warner Bros. And they also have several other streaming services, including HBO Max, which I think is doing reasonably well, and Discovery Plus. So having yet another streaming service underneath the Warner Bros. Media conglomerate, as CNN Plus was, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And so yet another reason why CNN Plus just didn't go over well. Now, this last paragraph is one that I really like because it says that you'd be hard-pressed to find a shorter shelf-life for streaming services than CNN Plus. For example, Verizon's Go90, which is not something I had ever heard of before, lasted for 3 years. And Quibi, I actually do remember that one, lasted more than 6 months. But I think I can explain another reason why it just didn't go over well. So from the Daily Beast, they point out that 2021 was not a great year for CNN. That while Trump was president, because they were, talking about how horrible and racist he was, that CNN actually did really, really well. And at the very beginning of 2021, CNN was on top of the cable news world. They had retaken the ratings crown from Fox News. Now, a lot of that, again, comes from Trump and also the January 6th riot. All of that boosted CNN through the roof. And for a while, they were doing really, really well. But then reality hit, Biden became president, and they absolutely collapsed. So much so that they fell all the way back down to 17th place among basic cable. They were first, and they fell all the way down to 17th. And in the midst of this 2021 year, someone decided to promote and come out with CNN Plus. And this is an issue. If your viewership decreased so dramatically in 1 year, and you decide to give them more of the same type of content for money, do you really think your subscriber base is going to come back and they're going to buy into that? It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And perhaps they were trying to do this as a way to revitalize CNN, but obviously it didn't work. The people who weren't watching didn't want to watch in the first place. And the people who were watching, well, some of them bought CNN Plus, but most of them didn't because they didn't want to spend money on that type of stuff. And the reason I'm talking about this at all is because I think it's pretty funny. When you have organizations like CNN, and I recognize that media, they tend to be very self-aggrandizing all the time, but I also think CNN is, up there. They view themselves as the most trusted name in news. And you have people like Brian Stelter, who contributed to this article, talking about how, Fox News is the worst because they publish and push forward disinformation. But then when they are questioned about the disinformation that CNN pushes forward, he says that's not the CNN that I watch. He is so sure of himself, and CNN is so sure of itself that it's doing fantastically well. When things like this happen, well, yeah, it's a little bit amusing to me. I do feel bad for, the regular people working at CNN Plus who are now losing their jobs, but I will recognize that CNN is actually doing a pretty good job of taking care of them. Because it points out a little while later that while hundreds of CNN staffers may lose their jobs, according to an internal memo, all of those employees will continue to be paid and receive benefits for the next 90 days, which is pretty nice. At the same time, I guess there is some obligation on CNN to take care of these people because they sunk hundreds of millions of dollars into this program, and people got jobs for a total of a month to work there, and now they're out of a job. So there's some obligation, but still, I want to make sure we recognize that in this, at least, CNN is doing the right thing. So in conclusion, CNN Plus was a failure from the beginning. The ratings were plummeting. They decided to come out with a new way to try and boost that, I suppose. It didn't work, and now they're closing after just 1 month. Maybe CNN will finally learn its lesson, that the world doesn't want more of this type of news. Actually, we want less of it. Less CNN would be a good thing in my book, and in the book of a lot of other Americans.